buy a new camera these days, what would you do? A long time ago, if you wanted to buy a new camera, you'd probably go online and do a web search and find out about cameras. But the chances are one of your Facebook friends just loves digital cameras and knows all about them, so you'd ask them for advice. If you wanted to play a good game these days, what would you do? Again, in the past, you would probably search or Google and try and sort of find out about good games. But the chances are there's probably some digital pack rat who knows all about what the latest games are. That brand specifier says, you want to play this game, you want to play this game. So on stage, we have Jennifer and Nick, who are going to tell us all about the great power of fandom and social gaming. So please take it away and knock yourselves out and entertain the audience. Thank you. Have fun.
Absolutely, we will. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Betka. I'm the Senior Vice President of Marketing for Wikia. How many of you know Wikia, wikia.com? Have you been there? Groovy. So we've been asked to talk about the power and influence of fandom and social gaming, and you guys have been talking about social gaming for the last few days. We're going to look at it through the lens of what Wikia sees as the platform for where superfans go to really create and collaborate all that there is to know around the things that they know and love. So you'll see we've sort of done a bit of a spotlight and themed around Candy Crush, which is probably by now you're Candy Crushed out, but it's one of the big lenses that we're looking through. So we're talking about Wikia as this sweet spot, really at that point where brands and fans are coming together to join forces. We're seeing more and more of our fans of video games in the core video game space and the social game space being sought after by brands. And so we're actually working with them in lots of collaborative ways, and through that lens we're going to share some insights with you on what we're seeing in terms of social gaming and fandom. But my job today is to take you through a little bit about why Wikia is in a sweet spot to tell you about this. We know pop culture. Our platform is made up of 75 million global uniques across the mobile and web. They are representing fans of television, movies, video games, social games, anime, books, you name it, but we call it pop culture. You know it as pop culture. Our platform is one of collaboration. People talk about being able to reach influencers, and it's a pretty jargony term, but from our point of view, influence is stemmed in knowledge, and so our users, our fans, are on our platform collaborating with others who are equally knowledgeable about subjects that they have an interest in. And out of that knowledge, they have an ability to be persuasive, to share what they know, to go up against someone else who knows a little bit about something as well. So through that lens, our users are incredibly influential. They are creating Wikia as the ultimate source for powerful and really relevant pop culture expertise. I've said it before, but Willy Wonka will tell you again. The idea is that this is where superfans go to create and collaborate. We represent over 300,000 fan communities. We're representing now about 1.5 billion monthly page views, actually closer to 30 million pages of content. In the last year and a half, we've done a lot of media outreach, and the press has recognized us as a platform where you can take a deep dive into pop culture, everything you've ever wanted to know, and then some. Forbes' point is the most impressive aspect about Wikia is that our author, through collaboration, reaches a level of speed and depth that any individual journalist or media outlet would desire. Our ever-evolving Wikias are a far better source of information for gamers than the static, single-author articles found in traditional gaming media. So through this lens, we want to take you into the world of Wikia. We are a top 10 social network from a perspective of Nielsen. We believe content is king, but it's really content made through this concept of we. We're not about individual expression the way that Facebook and Twitter are, where you're really responding to something that I post and it's about what you think of what I said. We're not traditional editorial, where it's about us and our point of view and being broadcast out to the world. It is really about what we together are choosing to create and to say. So I've already mentioned that we represent 300,000 communities. This is a snapshot of how they break down just through our entertainment vertical. 45,000 Wikias in the top right are representative of traditional games. Marry that with another 25,000 Wikias in representing social gaming. What you see is on the left is monthly page views, and then on the bottom is monthly contributions. So you really get a sense of the volume of activity and the volume of contributions. So our gaming communities are extremely active, but we also have 45,000 communities representing television shows, everything from Game of Thrones to Glee. Anime, 28,000 communities, and 20,000 communities representing movies. So my colleague Nick heads up research and is the inventor of a metric that we call WHAM. It's a great opportunity for me to introduce Nick Williams. He's going to take you through some insights that WHAM and some of the other stats that we look at on Wikia offer you through that perspective. Up, down.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I've been in the gaming business for about 10 years now. I worked on, helped to develop gamer metrics, which is, at the time, was IGN's kind of big tool to help understand insights into the audience, what kind of games they're interested in buying, what kind of games they're playing. And after coming to Wikia, the idea sprung to create a measure that kind of helps to measure social fandom and ranks all of the hundreds of thousands of communities that we have. So what you see here is a snapshot of the top 20 or so daily WHAM communities. And this is a public-facing page. You can visit it. It's wikia.com/WHAM. And one of the themes that you'll see in the next few slides is that a lot of people have been talking about what makes a social game, or any game for that matter, a franchise work, and what doesn't. And one thing that we've found, and a lot of people agree, is that if you have a solid community behind your franchise or game, that's one of the things that really creates lasting power and staying power. So the WHAM is kind of, in a way, an indicator of that. And we'll see more of that in a little bit. Oops, wrong way. Okay, so that's WHAM. So you can see here a snapshot, for example, during this July 30th we pulled for this, RuneScape is #1, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more later on. Elder Scrolls, so you have some kind of the traditional gaming in there, Puzzles and Dragons, Warframe. It's an interesting mix. It's always changing. Every day it's different. But these basically represent, based on our proprietary formula, which is traffic, so page views and uniques, engagement, which is contributions, and growth, so ones that have a lot of momentum behind them.
It's probably worth noting that WHAM stands for Wikia Activity
Thank you.
Monitor, and it is a proprietary algorithm, and that you can see that it's a stack rank of 0 to 100. So these scores are on the left that way represented.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see the peak rank, so it's the kind of the highest rank that it's ever scored. And there's also on the right, which is kind of zoomed out at the moment, you can see who the admins are, the people working on those communities. The gaming fan landscape. So we could have, at Wikia, we could have one of these grids for entertainment, for lifestyle, for movies, for TV. There's a lot of different categories that we cover. This is specifically looking at the gaming kind of spectrum, and you have two axes. One, you have social to traditional, and the other one is core to casual. And what I've done here is kind of pick some of the top franchises and our top communities in each of those quadrants, and then you'll see the bracket rather, shows the WHAM rank. So starting with the casual traditional market, which is kind of what I like to call the old school quadrant, because it's got a lot of those older Nintendo communities, Mario, Zelda. It's not necessarily where we're seeing the most growth in activity. Yeah. It's not necessarily where we're seeing the most growth in activity. So that's the traditional casual. Then we have the traditional core. So this is all about the big console games. So you have Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, Halo, etc. Those are the big core games that you see in franchises. You can see Elder Scrolls right now is at the top, #4. Getting more into the social spectrum, we have what we call the social core. So RuneScape is the leader in this quadrant. You also have League of Legends, Blood Brothers, and this is a lot of where you see some of that competitive gaming. It's kind of a lot of complex strategy type games. And then finally, we have the social casual, which is probably what's been spoken about the most at this conference. We have Candy Crush, you can see in the top right there. Club Penguin, Dragon Vale, Dragon City, Angry Birds. These are, some, and all of these quadrants, they have very thriving, engaged communities. And it's really important to note that, the Fandom covers all of those. It doesn't have to be a core game. So kind of talking more about the social to traditional, you can see here that social represents about 36% of all of our gaming communities. But if you see that last line there, you can see it's almost 50% of all of our contributions and the engagement, which basically shows that a lot of gamers are really moving to this space more and more. And this is further demonstrated by the next slide, which is about the difference between 2012 and 2013. You can see the number of social games has nearly tripled in our top 500 communities. So that's basically looking at the WAM top 500, and you can see the number of social games has increased dramatically. The number of monthly page views has increased by more than 300% year over year, and the number of monthly contributions has increased by more than 100% year over year. I talked about lasting power earlier on, and this chart is kind of meant to show the fleeting nature of some of these games and why WAM and Wikia is an interesting way to kind of measure the lasting power. You can see the lines, the purple and the orange, which have kind of been more consistent. That's Farmville and Angry Birds. They've kind of proven that they're strong franchises that can stick around for a while. They've been in the top 500 for the most part since we started tracking these things in early 2012. Sim Social, for example, a game that was ultimately canceled, you can kind of see when that happened because it, bless you, it dropped off the map. So it you could see that green line there. And then you have some of the new ones which have really come into play, starting with Dragon City, obviously Candy Crush, Hexit, which is the Minecraft spin-off, and then Monster Legends. So, one thing we can do is, this is just a, hand-picked selection of social games. We can look at a lot of different ones. Obviously, the graph would look crazy if we added any more. It already looks a little bit crazy. And then we have a little bit of a deep dive on RuneScape. So it's a little bit cut off on the side there. 3.8 million monthly users go to runescape.com where you actually play the game. And one thing we found is when you look at the overlap between that and the RuneScape Wikia, it's actually more than a third of the visitors to RuneScape visit the Wikia. So it's kind of like a complementary activity. And it's really interesting, it's actually, when you look at the cross-visiting reports, it's a very high overlap. And basically that means that they're using it as like a community, they're using it as a reference. And you can see, it's been around for over 12 years with 443 billion minutes logged since launch. So it's got a lot of staying power, and the strength of the community really shows that. Puzzle and Dragons, this is one that's really popped onto our radar this year. In January, all of a sudden we saw this game, bump into our, top 100, top 50, top 20, top 10. And, it's a huge Asian success. It's 17 million registered users, probably looking at around 5 to 8 active. That number isn't really released that often. Almost exclusively in Japan. And, our community gets 1 million monthly uniques. 97% of that comes from Asia. So we're talking about fleeting or forever. This has really set itself up for success, especially as it moves to the US and other territories. We're seeing it's peaked at #1 already. I think it's around #5 now. But a really strong community and a sign that, Wikias don't have to just be about in the US, it's an international phenomenon. And just leave you with this thought before I hand back to Jennifer. you know, kind of just to repeat what I've been saying, a game's lasting power is in direct relation to the strength of the community behind it, and that's something that WEM, which everyone has access to at wikia.com/WEM, you can check it out and see which communities are the strongest. Thanks.
Thank you. So then the question is, so what makes a strong community? And at Wikia, we have some thoughts on that. It's not a formula, it's not a cookie cutter, but the science ends up being a combination of this idea of a perfect storm, what's fueling fandom. So the social games, the casual games have really hit on something. They're definitely available, they're accessible, they're easy, but they're still challenging. This is something that runs community. They're just social enough. Some of them do this better than others, but the idea that your friends or your colleagues or other people can help you, guide you, participate, make your gameplay better is something that also factors what builds a good fan community. This is actually one of the most important aspects of what builds a great fan community on Wikia. It is a topic that is complex and dynamic. So it's complex enough that it requires you to dissect characters and levels and powers and storylines, whatever you're talking about, whether it's a game or an entertainment or a book. The idea also is that it's dynamic and it's constantly changing. This is something that is important as a baseline for what makes a really strong Wikia fan community. And then finally, what's been great about seeing the social games kind of take off on our platform is that the ones that are taking off have some aspect of being sort of this tongue-in-cheek, healthy addiction. We find that you've seen it out there on the bus, at work, like, everybody says it in a slightly different way, but the communities are reflecting this. And we were recently talking to a super fan who's made it to level 380 of Candy Crush, and she said, she's a hardcore gamer, she plays lots of games, but when it comes to being at home with her kids, she plays Candy Crush because it's the healthy addiction. It's the one game that she can play with her kids. And so there is something about that is a factor in what's driving some of the rapid adoption of fan communities' interest in social games. And we say it's slightly different here. People love candy, but on Wikia, we also know that our fans are huge lovers of fantasy, and they're also huge lovers, whether in the game space or not, of pets and animals. So again, it's taking the stuff that we love and putting it into something that's easy and challenging, that has this sort of complexity to it that requires us to chronicle and document and create source material for others, is really what's sort of this sweet spot of Wikia, fandom, and social gaming. So from our perspective, just to recap, we're 75 million global fans of everything from games, TV, movies, books, music, and lifestyle subjects. We have some Wikias on roller coasters, on coasts in terms of travel, but also on science and bacon. So through the lens of what we see on our platform, we are this social universe for fandom. And everything that goes on our platform is in celebration of something that somebody or many people love. So we often say, what do you love? And thank you very much. This was the last presentation, and we were asked to present you lots of stats, so perfect, the last and stats. Hopefully you enjoyed it. It's been a pleasure to chat with all of you. If you have any questions, Nick and I are sticking around. Okay.
Does anybody have any questions? Well, I'm going to start with one, and then we'll come. What's the critical mass for a fan site? How many people do you need to sort of actively participate before it becomes self-sustaining and then grows?
So jump in here, but I'll say, for example, our Call of Duty Wikia is one of the largest and most thriving, and it's driven by 3 admins. Whereas some of our other communities, like our Star Wars, our Wikipedia community, has dozens of admins. So there's really no perfect science to say you have to have an administrative fan crew of dozens in order to be a thriving community. It's really about the topic and the mix of people and how they've structured their community. And sometimes there's a gamification of the community as well. So there's a culture, how often you can edit, what the rules for editing are, how the content is organized, whether video is allowed. So all of that is about how open it is and how welcoming it is to others to participate as well. Does that answer your question?
Hi. I was just wondering if you've seen developers interact with Wikia communities in any ways that were especially like either encouraged and led to more growth, or kind of like poisoned the well and drove people away.
It's a great question, really great question. We've seen huge demand for fans wanting to connect with the creators, and now we're seeing more demand for the creators wanting to connect with the fans. So we've, in the last year, we put together a few programs to facilitate it, and it starts easy. It starts like this. If you, as a developer, want to participate in the community, and you let us know, we'll broker a relationship and ask the community if they're open to it. And if they are, we authenticate you, which basically means we let the community know that you really are who you say you are. So, for example, we have a partnership with the Roddenberry Foundation, and Gene Roddenberry's handle is Rod Roddenberry, Gene Roddenberry's son, is the Rod Roddenberry. And so you might not actually know that it's the Rod Roddenberry. So we've authenticated him, and we bring those authenticated members into the community as peers. And we make sure that that actually is the way that the intention of the developer or the creator is kind of coming into the community. Then we've layered on lots of things. We have an affiliate relationship where there's a direct linking connection. We have official communities where there's committed asset sharing, and then we also have a program called The Lab, where developers and creators want to work with fans well in advance before they've made any information available publicly. And we have a set of stars that we have under NDA who are essentially professional fans who will be interested in what lab projects, and we connect them. Their job is to essentially create the foundation, and then we bring in subject experts who can sort of build on what they've created. And we have a number of those programs right now working probably a year in advance on game titles and a couple of other television titles as well.
What do you think about, or can you talk about Google communities and how, if you see a similarity with your product, or, you know, I've been thinking about creating a Google community for my game. Should I not and create a Wikia instead, and why?
Well, I think you know the answer. That would.
Well,
Yeah, I mean.
it's a new thing,
So, I'll say it this way. As the person in charge of the brand, I've been really excited about the idea of Wikia, because we are a publishing platform. Everybody knows what a wiki is. It means you can collaborate, but we've advanced our publishing platform so much that we are no longer really a wiki platform. We're a Wikia platform. We've added features that allow our fans to do things well beyond what they could do on other publishing platforms. And just the fact that they can collaborate is better than some traditional publishing platforms, but then they can collaborate and produce really tricked out experiences. They can do their own leaderboards, they can do quizzes, they can do scavenger hunts, they can kind of do whatever it is beyond just organizing and broadcasting content. And then we've added a bunch of social layers to that. So we feel like this platform is super for super fans. Like we've gone beyond what other publishing platforms are, because we've taken a lot of the feedback of what fans want. So I actually wouldn't compare us so much to Google in particular. In fact, we use a lot of Google's tools as a part of making decisions and helping our communities make decisions.
Okay.
I've seen fan communities on both of those, so I'm wondering how fan communities relate versus this other platform.
So we have a partnership, for example, with Sony Online Entertainment, and they're actually at SOE Live today and making some announcements. And we have asked them. They've got forums, they've got official websites, they've got Twitter feeds, they've got Facebook pages. How does their official Wikia, because they have about 9 different official communities on Wikia, how do those official communities fit into the mix of their social communication? And they said it like this, and I think this is how we've heard it from others as well. They use channels like Twitter and Facebook as alerts. like we are going to be saying this, or look over here for this information. It's thin and sort of bursty kind of communications. They use forums to problem solve, and then they take the content that they use in both of those environments and they use them as sort of the Wikia is the repository for that plus everything else. So I'd say the core of what we do on Wikia is offer the place that access the source for all things, and then the other channels really serve to kind of go in and out of that. But there's no formula that works for everybody. We've seen that be the norm, that the traditional social channels act as nice complements to what happens on Wikia, because there's a longevity and a history and an archiving sort of mentality to what happens with us.
So another question for me. I'm curious, or out of interest, is there any compensation for some of the moderators or some of the large groups, or is it all just done for the love?
It's all done for love. Our CEO likes to say passion beats pay. And so, you know, what we... But
You must love your job.
we do a lot to make our communities happy. And there's a lot of collaboration. Our company operates with a spirit of collaboration. So we don't actually, you know, we ingest it. And so we do a lot to broker relationships with fans and information, fans and people and other experts, and that's really exciting. Really, really exciting for them. So as long as we are building tools and making connections that further their pursuit of whatever they're passionate about, we're good.
Any more? Oh, another question.
Hi.
Do you have a criteria as to who you would accept? As I don't want to use the word client, but yeah, just the developer side to make it to make the developer accessible to your fans. Do you have a criteria for that?
Well, it's hard to call it a criteria, but let me put it this way: if a brand or a developer is interested in collaborating with a fan and they approach us and they use words like control or scrub or, you know, any of those kinds of, any messages that give us the sense that they think they're going to own what's going on, it's not the right match. And we're very okay with that. It's not, you know, some brands come from the perspective of they want their Facebook page and they want to own it and they want it to look like what it's going to look like, and everything that's on there is really a reflection of their ad campaign. That's not what we are. It's really about the fans powering it. We've found so far that the majority of developers and creators out there that want to collaborate with us are coming to the table in the spirit of regard and respect for the fans.
Do you have any restrictions about mature content and what you would and wouldn't take? You want to explain those?
Yeah, please jump in. we have our own terms and conditions. We operate on a Creative Commons license, but we layer on top of that terms and conditions that rule kind of the guidance of mature content. And we also do some level of editing of content before it gets published in the sort of more visual assets. It just goes through a process of making sure that it's appropriate, and if it's not, it doesn't get published. But some things are appropriate because they're in the right context.
And are there any geographic restrictions that where your sites can be viewed or not?
It's in just about every language and country, yeah, that would have access.
Any more questions? Oh, yes, we have one more question.
I know your site is all about fanship, but I'm wondering, are any brands or developers actually using your platform as a main forum of, you know, to jump in and start becoming the first admins to build the community that way? And what's the percentage of the, you know, the pages being owned by the brands themselves or, you know, the developers themselves, etc.?
I would say, you know, usually, especially historically, most communities happen organically and naturally, and that's the best way for them to happen. That doesn't mean that if you, like Jennifer mentioned before, if you have the right spirit behind it, you can create, you know, that partnership with the fans and start from scratch and create something. I think, you know, there's a lot of examples of that. Planet Side would be one. But yeah, it's definitely something where, you know, it's hard to say there's a perfect formula for making one of these things explode. It's usually just, it's driven by the fans, and the more you try and push it, the worse the results are going to be.
Said another way, we do have a history of creating brand pages. Years ago, actually, before Nick and I even joined the company, the company had experimented with it, and it tends to fall flat if the fans aren't the ones creating it. What's working really well is the foundation being organically created, and then the creators coming in and participating. We've heard a lot from creators that they use these Wikias as their own source material. So they go back to the early levels of a game that they no longer have the console for, and they kind of look up the gameplay. We've heard it from Lost that they use the Wikia as sort of a guide around expressions that were being communicated in Lost, and then they wrote that into the script. So we hear a lot of those stories, but the ones that we don't hear a lot of success around are brands coming in and sort of thinking of this as like a branded Facebook page. These are all great questions. Thank you.